So, thank you very much. I'm just going to introduce now the last section of this session, which is going to be a fireside chat with Maren Costa. So, you're definitely going to want to stay for this one. Maren is a prominent American advocate for climate justice, workers' rights, and corporate responsibility. She's best known for co-founding Amazon's Employees for Climate Justice group, and she was illegally fired by Amazon for so-called policy violations tied to her activism. In 2019, Amazon's Employees for Climate Justice group inspired 3,000 employees to walk out of work internationally. So we're going to talk about that today. More recently, Maren was the star of a Netflix documentary, which you might have seen, called Buy Now, The Shopping Conspiracy, where we see her on a fearless mission to challenge consumerism and to fight for corporate responsibility. So please welcome Maren to the stage.
I guess I think
so we're quite far away from each other, but we'll make it work. We'll make it work. We know each other well enough. So Maren, I'm so excited to have you on today. I think everyone... Actually, let's do hands up. Has anyone seen Buy Now on Netflix? Quite a few people. OK, maybe 30, 40%. Do you want to tell us first about that, just as a bit of a hook? You know, what got you involved in this documentary? What's it about?
I got a call from the filmmakers. They had been already interviewing several people that were working. The working title of the film was Waste. And they wanted to do a film about overconsumption and how it's impacting the world. And someone had given them my name, and they found me. And I was actually running for an elected office at the time. They asked me if I could just come down to LA. I was up in Seattle, and I went down for like 48 hours and back. That was my extent of the film, you know. But and then they went away for a year and they did their work, and then they came back and they said, you know, after we did your interview, that's when we knew we had a film. And I ended up, I didn't know if I was going to be on the cutting room floor, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I loved the film, and I really encourage you all to watch it. Tell us just briefly about, you know, why they called you up, and what was your experience inside Amazon, doing what we might call internal lobbying.
Yeah, I started at Amazon when it was so small, and the story was actually that e-commerce was going to be more green than, you know, everybody driving their own car to their market and back. So for a while, I felt like I was actually doing something good for the world. But then Amazon became this behemoth that we know now, and I saw Jeff Bezos change from this sort of nerdy geek to Lex Luthor from, you know, a Marvel movie. And I just started to really question what was happening, and you know, the sales were going up, and I was actually Amazon's first principal user experience designer, so I was the one that was making a lot of these decisions and a lot of these designs that encourage people to buy. And so I started lobbying internally to play the inside role of really asking for, you know, appealing to their better nature. Like, hey, you know, why don't we at least tell consumers about the externalized cost of what they're buying, and they can make a choice. But of course, that might impact profit, and I was naive enough at the time to think that asking would work.
And when 3,000 people walked out on one day, you know, what was Jeff Bezos' response?
He created the climate pledge. In fact, Amazon had no climate pledge at all, no climate goals. And we started organizing, and we actually just announced that we had already organized 1,700 workers to walk out for the global climate strike, and just that threat was enough. The inside sources told us that was when they really started to say, we got to do something. And so on the night of the global climate strike in 2019, they unveiled the climate pledge.
Wow.
And that was their company-wide plan to be, you know, carbon neutral by 2040.
Very
which
tactical.
of course they're walking back on now.
Yes.
All of the big tech, yeah.
It's very tactical timing that they released that just as the strike happened.
Yeah.
It seems a bit of a coincidence, don't you think?
Surprise.
So meanwhile, your internal lobbying, Amazon is also spending millions externally lobbying governments that involved in fossil fuels at the time. What did that look like from the inside? Did employees sense that? Did they feel that?
We knew about it, but one of the first things we did was we submitted a shareholder resolution, which in the States is a way that you can try to influence a corporation by getting a bunch of people to sign on, and if you own shares of stock, which tech workers commonly get paid in stock. So we had launched this shareholder resolution, and the top person in sustainability called us into a meeting to ask us to withdraw the shareholder presentation. And
so that's the head of sustainability.
At Amazon.
Withdraw.
Asked us to withdraw it, and of course we said no. But we also brought with us an article by Brian Merchant that had just been written about Amazon's deals with oil and gas, and that were very, not loudly talked about, but big oil has long needed big tech for the AI to increase oil production. So we brought this article that Brian Merchant was really sort of putting out. He's a really great writer, and he put out it in a more of a loud way than I think most people had been paying attention. And she was not aware of it. She was not aware that she seemed very taken off guard, and then got sort of defensive because I think she was just so. She was like, no, we don't do that. And then was like, well, here's this article right here.
So the person who's supposed to be in charge of sustainability at Amazon didn't know that Amazon was involved in any sort of lobbying for fossil fuels?
Yes. And
that's quite
they've moved the sustainability, the corporate sustainability group into basically the PR department, which tells you a lot about it.
Yeah. I think that's more and more common nowadays. I hear from a lot of companies who are, that's why greenwashing is such a thing, right? Because marketing and PR it tends to be the only sustainability arm of the business. It doesn't go deeper, it doesn't go operationally.
Right.
And that's what you experienced.
Right. I think it's better at optimizing optics, as we used to say at Amazon.
Optimizing optics. I love that. And so, Maren, with your experience, do you, just because we're talking about lobbying today, do you have any faith left at all in corporate lobbying?
In the States, I think we left our democracy well before 2024. I think lobbying at this point is a tool for the oligarchy, the tech bro oligarchy, if you want, especially, and big oil. Now big tech needs big oil to build out AI at the level that they want to, doubling data centers over the next couple years. And so that's how you see everybody walking back on their climate commitments. You see all the big tech guys right behind Donald Trump on stage for the inauguration. I don't know how we can, that is such a concentration of wealth and power. I don't know how lobbyists, we need a movement of the people to really come together to challenge this, and it needs to be global. Yeah. They're thinking globally, they're acting globally, we need to act globally.
We were speaking before about the dangers of what some call masculine technological optimism, which is a phrase coined by an Irish feminist scientific researcher called Jenny Stevens, who I'm a fan of. And she talks about this phrase, masculine technological optimism, which I think it really encapsulates what you're getting at. So do you think that kind of, with generative AI, and AI advancing so fast, what are the dangers when it comes to lobbying of tech having such a close relationship with governments? Especially having worked in tech yourself.
It's very, very dangerous what we are heading into right now. And if we continue to decide that we don't want to see this, it comes down to values. When whoever is in power, and these guys are in such extreme power, our values by default are theirs. So if we don't share their values, which are profit over people and planet. They are digging billion-dollar bunkers and building rocket ships. They are abusing the entire global south and workers in the US and I mean everywhere. Like if this are great, do you agree? Let's not do anything about it then, because we're good, you know? And if we don't agree, we better think about building a countervailing force. Right now we have no countervailing force. And lobbyists, great, but politicians, great. You need a will from the people. You need people. I'm looking at you and this whole amazing, beautiful building full of people. We need to decide that this is not the world we want. And we don't have to accept this world. We have the absolute power to choose a different world. We can choose a regenerative world over an exploitive world. Exploitative, oh my God, I never say that word right. Exploitative world. We can choose a compassionate world over greed. Right now we have greed driving almost everything that is happening and it's global. We're too small, the world is too small now, we're too connected. For these guys, 8 out of 10 of the top richest people in the world right now come out of big tech. What are we going to do about that? I have some ideas. I mean, come, like, let's talk, you know?
Well, in terms of actually getting there, let's talk about those ideas, because we were chatting earlier about this idea of consumers v employees. Was that the two that you said were kind of in competition? Yeah. So, you know, Maren was saying earlier that she was speaking at a conference previously where they were saying, you know, who has more power? Is it consumers or is it employees? And most people said consumers. But you would argue it's workers, it's employees. Within your company, you have, is that, do you think, the most concrete action we can all do ourselves to change?
That is such a place of power for us. So many climate nonprofits, you know, their strategies right now are corporate engagement or, you know, petitions where they'll get thousands and thousands of signatures and hand it over to Amazon or another corporation, but it's like they don't care. You know, it's just not enough to even make a ripple. How many consumers do you have to shut down from Amazon before they notice? They have 2 billion some customers, you know? Whereas workers, we have something that they want, and it doesn't have to be, you know, just Amazon. Wherever you work, you already have a network, for starters. That's a powerful thing that you can tap into, and you have something that people in power want, which is your labor. They are actively working to get us out of jobs with AI, so we will be losing that power. The sooner we act, the more power we have, but that is something that, you know, has been the longest standing power that the people have had is strikes or work stoppages, because it's the way to impact the bottom line, which at the end of the day, in this capitalistic world.
And you said, you mentioned strikes. You know, obviously we're in France. The French love a strike. Grève. Une grève. So I hope I got the right gender. Is it une grève? Yeah, une grève. Thanks. So, you know, we love a strike in France. You've said, something that you've said before is something that you think that we need is a collective action army to tackle these systemic issues. What do you mean by that?
Well, and I usually say nonviolent collective action.
That's
and I know army isn't the best word. I mean, but I think people power is our strongest lever, whether it's people pushing governments or people pushing policy or people pushing the small town, Clover's small town that stood up against the, you know, this is the power that we have. It's the only power. I would love, if somebody has another idea, please tell me. But this is the only thing I can think of that can tackle this amount, this concentration of power and this very reckless race towards collapse.
And are you skeptical? Because, you know, on the panel that we just had, we did have, you know, some examples of some positive lobbying, you know, some from clean tech startups, you know, obviously they have less resources than big oil. Are you positive about those, or do you just think there's no hope for lobbying when it comes to corporations?
We have to do everything we can. I don't want to disparage. We have to come from every level, every angle, everywhere we can. But that starts with building community and building connections and building power. So no matter where you are, no matter what you do, start where you are, building power, talk about it, find common ground. Let's talk about how our values are differing from what we see in power right now, and talk about how we'd like it to be different. Part of the collapse is the rebuilding, and part of resistance is not what you're saying no to, it's what you want to say yes to, and we have to start building that now.
And what else gives you hope, especially when it comes to climate action?
You have to ask the toughest question. I just want to see more of us opening our eyes and waking up to the fact that this is a different time. This is an unprecedented time. We have multiple existential threats that we know of. A couple of them, climate change and AI, have very short windows within which to act. This is not your grandparents', existential threat. We really need people to wake up and join the fight.
Yeah.
And there's kind of one front that we need to work on. We're kind of scattered. Let's get together and strategize together, and we can do it. And it might be easier than we think, because I think people are ready for this. I think everywhere I go, I'm hearing people respond with, oh yeah, wow, that.
Yeah.
If it's around the world, which I believe it is, when it overflows, when it reaches its tipping point, it's going to be everywhere all at once, and we will have so much power. So we got to do it.
And especially hearing your story, I think is particularly inspiring, I'm sure, for everyone in the room. So being here at ChangeNOW is probably a good place to start. Collective Resistance Army, who's in? Are we in? Hands up, who's in? Great. Thank you so much. Please give Maren a round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. See you soon.